You know, the Detroit Star Trek fans are really special. You've got energy, and you have tenacity, and it's this kind of enthusiasm that's kept Star Trek going for, would you believe, for me, 20 years. We made the pilot back in 1965. And the fact that I'm here today to share with you some of the things that are happening with, believe it or not, Star Trek 4 is all because of what you all have done all these past 20 years. You guys are the ones that really should take the credit for this phenomenon called Star Trek. So, thank you. This afternoon I took the People Mover across the way over to the shopping mall there and got a chance to say hello to some of you. I thought I'd be able to do it incognito, but I guess Star Trek's been alive and well here in the Detroit area for much too long. And getting that kind of welcome, those warm, friendly smiles, and then to walk in here and get that enthusiastic, overwhelming applause is really good for the actor's ego. But what this does is really give us an appreciation of the secret weapon that Star Trek has always had. It's been an incredible history for Star Trek, but the real thing that's been the generator, the momentum giver, has been all of you. Because when we premiered back in 1966, September of 1966, and September of 1986 is only a few months away, actually 13, 14 months away. We'll be celebrating the 20th anniversary of Star Trek then. But when we premiered as a series, we knew that we had a good show. It was a show put together with a great deal of integrity, primarily by Gene Roddenberry, who had a vision of what the future for human civilization might be. And we knew that it was a show that was put together with a lot of imagination by the group of writers that Gene Roddenberry gathered together. But most importantly, we were proud to be associated with a show that had a confidence and an optimism of humankind's place in the future of human society. Because, you know, at that time, there was a general air, a pall of gloom and doom over American society in generally, but throughout the world. Because we had things that were tearing away at the fabric of our country. For example, we had the civil rights movement, which was coming to a real flaming peak at that time because of our inability to live with each other because of color pigmentation differences. We had the Vietnam War that had two opposing philosophies, a war that many people didn't support, and a war that the people in the upper echelons of government were deeply committed to. That was tearing the fabric of this country apart. We had social currents going on, the hippie movement, the flower child movement, a lifestyle difference between one generation and another, and a generational kind of conflict that was going on. We had the advent of the drug culture that was radically changing the lives and lifestyles of this society. And many people thought that America was doomed. America was changing. It was not the America that people knew as America before. And there was this general attitude that we were done as a civilization. We no longer had heroes, but anti-heroes, the small man, the failed man, and we pitied the people, you know, with the frailties. At a time like that, Star Trek came on the air, you know, and on a medium that really was the most potent, powerful medium for communication and for inspiration. And at that time, it was characterized by the chairman of the FCC, Newton Minow, as the vast wasteland. And indeed it was. Most of the shows were packed. In that vast wasteland, Star Trek came on the air, first with characters that people could admire, people who had values that they could subscribe to, people who showed courage and grace under extreme pressure. We had what genuinely were heroes. And it's important, I think, for society to have people that we can admire and try to pattern ourselves after. We had a show who philosophically said that as awesome as the problems that we face may seem, if we have confidence in the human talent, the human ability to solve problems, to be creative, to be innovative, then we can overcome the seemingly insurmountable kinds of problems. A very important statement that was made, you know, that to have confidence in ourselves and to have that kind of vision of affirmation, of positive optimism about our place in the future. It was an important statement that was made. And so we were proud to be associated with that. But we also had to do battle with those Klingons called the NBC executives. Those people that set the ratings and the people that do the programming. And these people were absolutely baffled by a show like Star Trek that embodied these values. And so when they're baffled, they put the show on at the worst possible time slot. We opened the first season at 10 o'clock on Thursday nights. The third season that killed us off was 10 o'clock on Friday nights. Now, you know, I like to think of Star Trek as an intelligent show, as a hit show, as a show that's with it. And, you know, at 10 o'clock at night on Fridays, that intelligent, hit, with it audience is out. They're being hit and with it, you know. And if you're home, you're not certainly watching television, but you're in another part of the house doing very hit with it activities. So our ratings were way down there, you know, the third season. And they had the numbers with which to justify cancellation of Star Trek. After we were canceled, then we went into syndication. It was the syndicators, the local stations, that put it on at an hour that was much more accessible to our kind of audience. You know, people, some interviewers ask about, well, you know, the fans came out of the woodworks after we were canceled. I say, no, no, no. The fans were always there in great numbers, and it was broad-based. It was just that the programming people had us, you know, on inside a closet, and so the huge audience couldn't see us. But when we were in syndication, then the broad, large audience found us. And we found that you were not just a large audience, but an activist audience. The kind of audience that responded to an activist and creative and ideas-oriented show such as Star Trek was. And so those of you that were artistically talented, you know, you started to express yourself in terms of your art, painting, sculpture, needlepoint. Those of you that were literarily oriented started to write short stories, scripts, poetry. Those of you that were more entrepreneurial started to produce phaser guns and tricorders and selling them to other fans. And those of you that are organizers organized these things called conventions. And you all gathered together and you found that there were others who shared these feelings with you, and you reinforced each other. And you mounted these campaigns called letter writing campaigns. And you and all of you Star Trek people have powerful pens. We discovered very shortly after that, because you started your letter writing campaign. They started thinking in terms of reviving Star Trek on television. And we did get revived in the early 70s as an animated series on Saturday morning. I think about 2 seasons worth of that. And you still kept, you know, mounting those letter writing campaigns. And Paramount at one time talked of reviving us as a TV series, then as a special for television, a movie for television. And then at one time they even talked of starting up a fourth network in competition with ABC, NBC, and CBS. You know, the Paramount Network, of course. And their flagship was going to be Star Trek. That was going to be the real attraction for this fourth network, which never did happen. But then, in order to demonstrate another part of your muscle, you decided to demonstrate your support for our space program. I mean, you're going beyond just reviving a television show. You're going to actively participate in the shaping of our civilization. And you launched a campaign to name the first space shuttle the Enterprise, the real star of Star Trek. Again, that applause belongs to you because you're the ones who did it. And this time you focused your letter writing campaign not at NBC or Paramount, but you focused it at the White House, and no less a personage than President Gerald Ford. At that time, the decision was made to name the first space shuttle the Constitution in honor of the bicentennial. But your letter writing, your persuasiveness was an awesome thing. And the President of the United States had to bow to your persuasion and announce that indeed the first space shuttle would be named the Enterprise. Alas, the first one was not going to be the operative one that goes out into space. So we were named, we did get the first one named the Enterprise, but that has not flown yet. Because the rumor that I hear now is that the NASA people are about to bring that ship that was christened the Enterprise out, and they may make that an operable space shuttle, and so it may go out into space yet. Yes, launch another campaign advocating the Enterprise actually going out into space. Oh, wouldn't that be great on the 20th anniversary if in September of 1986 they could take off into space with George Takei on board. Yes, I had my bid to be the first actor on the space shuttle, and I'd like to think I'm the one that's most physically fit and qualified to do that one. So, what? Well, I'll take Michelle along with me, but she's going to have to whittle down the avoirdupois. But you accomplished that. I mean, it's an incredible thing. And prompted by this kind of demonstration, Paramount finally realized that they had something. I mean, you know, Paramount is pretty dense. It took a great deal of persuasion. I think the final thing that toppled Paramount's thinking in the direction of going ahead with Star Trek was the enormous success of Star Wars. That was a gigantic box office success, and Paramount said, well, here we have Star Trek under our nose all these years, and, you know, why haven't we done anything about it? And they started looking around and said, not my fault. Not my fault, you know. So the bug passing began, and so, you know, finally it got going. In 1979, we premiered with Star Trek the Motion Picture. That was staggeringly... That was a very, very highly budgeted. Well, actually, it wasn't budgeted highly. It just went over budget, so it turned out to be a very costly film. And because it was a costly film, that very well could have been the end of Star Trek if we hadn't justified the cost. Not we, if you hadn't. And you folks lined up. It was in the dead of winter, and you lined up, you know, around the corner, around the block, you know, in droves, standing out there in that freezing, I would think in your case, in the freezing Michigan cold. I was going to say in the freezing California cold, about 75 degrees. When I was doing the promotional for Star Trek, the motion picture, I wound up my tour in New York City. And the studio promotional people called me one morning and said, and told me, you know, George, the tickets are going on sale. But, you know, this was a week before the opening of the film. The tickets went on sale a week before. And he said, the tickets are going on sale this morning, and we have a line of people waiting to buy the tickets. And I said, well, wait a minute. Doesn't the film premiere next week? He says, yeah, well, but we're putting, you know, we're going to start selling today. And I said, well, why are they it's cold out there. I'm a fragile Southern Californian flower, and, you know, I go from the cab, you know, 3 feet into the hotel where it's warm. I can't stand that New York cold too much. And, you know, to me it was absolutely science fiction to think that people would stand in line out in that stuff that I won't tolerate for more than 30 seconds, you know, a dash between the cab and the hotel. And the PR man said, well, they've been there overnight. And I said, what? I mean, say that again. I mean, you must, you know, I couldn't be hearing you properly. He said they came in their sleeping bags, and they camped out in that frigid, early December cold on the street in New York, waiting to buy the first ticket for Star Trek. I said, "You got to be kidding." He said, "No, they're there." I said, "Look out your window." I was on Central Park South of the theaters on the corner there. So I looked out, and sure enough, there was this ragtag line of mounds of clothes, you know, on the sidewalk. And occasionally it moved, so I knew there were people inside those mounds of parkas and blankets and whatever they had over them. And so I did go out there to say thank you to them. But then I was further aghast to discover that the tickets were $5. You know, until then, tickets were, back in 1978, it was $4.50. We boldly went where no other motion picture price had gone. We broke that barrier too, $5, and I said, "I will not be party to this. I'm not going to, you know, be the front man for this kind of rip-off. $5 for this thing and making these people stand in the cold." They said they were there all night, George. I mean, you can't, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, as terrible as that $5 price was, I got to go out there. And so bundled up, you know, with my nose, it wasn't even pink, it was blood red, you know. That was the only part of me that was exposed. I don't know, you know, I could have sent someone else out there because I was all covered up, you know, and the PR man could have introduced him as George Takei, and they would probably have accepted. But with my pink nose out in the front, and I shook everybody's hand down the line and thanked them for it. But it was that kind of insane, lunatic dedication to Star Trek that's brought Star Trek to this point. Not only did you line up in the cold, but you lined up in the spring, and you lined up in the heat of summer. I mean, you kept going to see it over and over and over again, and the box office was way over $100 million. And because of that, Paramount decided, yes, I guess there is indeed an audience out there. Maybe we ought to think of Star Trek 2. And Star Trek 2 was done. I didn't stand out in the cold, you did. So the applause belongs to you, who stood or sat or slept out in the cold. And you did that with Star Trek 2 also, and that broke all records for the first 3 days box office, $14 million. But with Star Trek 3, you broke that record too, $16 million in the first 3 days. And do you know that Star Trek 3 came in for $16 million? So in the first 3 days, we took in our negative cost. And that credit primarily belongs to Leonard Nimoy. He is an outstanding director. You know, I got to confess that all of us had some reservation about Leonard when he was first assigned the directorship of Star Trek 3, because suddenly the relationship has changed. You know, he's a co-actor, and we're all kind of sidling with each other for our place in the sun or our place in the spotlight, as the case may be. But, you know, that's one relationship. When one's the director, that person makes the decision on whose line gets cut or who gets an extra line, who's, you know, the camera's going to focus on which character in what scene, you know, the direction and the course of the script. And so he's in that catbird seat. And suddenly, you know, we had to work with him in order to get our character focused on. You know, naturally we would all think that we're a friend of Leonard's and we would have the inside track, but the trouble is all of us had been working with him for the past 18, 19 years, and we were all friends, and he had that very difficult job of having to be Solomon with 6 different people. What Leonard demonstrated, first of all, he's a very, very organized guy, and we knew that he would be able to handle the organizational aspect of it. But that isn't necessarily the place where a director really makes his mark. You know, the director has to get the values of the script up there on the screen. To do that is easier said than done. He's very well organized, and we have respect for Leonard on that basis. He's a very creative guy, as he well demonstrated with the unique singular, individual character that he created with Spock. That was his real creative ability that made Spock so fascinating. We knew he was capable of that. How would he deal with 6 egos, you know, that all like to think these egos are Leonard's very deep, personal, most intimate friend, you know, and that he has a special kind of obligation to, you know, because we've all done you many favors, Leonard, you know, that sort of thing. How was he going to deal with that? What Leonard demonstrated, I think, was, well, a lot of things. He was really a diplomat. He was a psychiatrist. But more than that, he was really a leader. He was able to get the kind of respect that we had for him on these other counts, his organizational ability and creative ability, and to get that same kind of respect as a leader of all of us. And as you noticed in Star Trek III, all of us had more to do and more opportunity to show our character than any of the other films, and that is Leonard's doing. Leonard knows the values of Star Trek. He knows what Star Trek stands for. He has a keen feeling for it, but he also knew each of the actors and how we felt, and he brought our personal actors' feelings as well as the rich characters that we all inhabit into the screenplay of Star Trek III. And so, because he had that kind of special way of dealing with each one of the various elements, whether it's the cast, or the script, or the crew, or the front office people, and they gave him a difficult time, but he dealt with them well. He was able to accomplish the absolutely unheard of thing in Hollywood of bringing a $16 million film in on schedule to the day, and of all unbelievable things, $200,000 under budget. They expect a production to go about $200,000 over budget, and they wouldn't lift an eyebrow. But he brought it in under budget. And so I'm sure you can understand why the front office people were more than happy to have him direct Star Trek IV. The phenomenon doesn't stop there yet, what you've accomplished, because Star Trek now is in video cassette form, something that we never dreamed would exist, you know, back a short 20 years ago. Change and progress is accelerating at a very, very rapid rate. And so here we are with these episodes that we shot 20 years ago that you can see in your own living room anytime you want at the unbelievable price of $14.95. Get it while they last. And Star Trek, the motion pictures, all the 3 motion pictures are out in video as well. And so, you know, people ask me to, you know, predict where Star Trek's going to be in another 10 years. I refuse to do that because 20 years ago, I never would have dreamed that we would have had life beyond cancellation, you know, in 1969. And here we're finding that there are many guises, many kinds of lives after cancellation. And I really look forward to the next installment, Star Trek IV, which again we owe to all of you, the kind of dedicated, loyal, crazy support that you gave us over all these years. As I said, Leonard Nimoy will be directing it. Harv Bennett will be producing it. We thought for a while that we might be boldly going without Admiral Kirk, because he gave Paramount a rough run for their negotiating money. But they let slip a rumor that Star Trek IV may have Kirk talked about, but Kirk himself may not appear. Shortly after that, we heard that Bill's finally signed. We were originally scheduled to start shooting in March of this year, but because of that negotiation impasse, that got pushed back to September. Now we're having some script problems. We have some, you know, challenging things that we have to deal with. For example, we left a lot of loose ends at the end of Star Trek III that we've got to tie up. And we have a major loss that we have to somehow deal with also. And so they're having some difficulty dealing with that. And so they pushed the start date from September to November, and then November became December. and now they're talking about the second week of January. So although initially we had all hoped that we could have Star Trek 4 out next summer to coincide with the 20th birthday party for Star Trek, it may be that it's going to be the Christmas season of 1986 when Star Trek 4 is going to be out, but we most definitely will get it out before 1986 is out. So, you know, spread the word that Star Trek will indeed be back in 1986. It never left, but Star Trek 4 will be out. The writers are two young writers. Again, the venturesomeness of Star Trek. The two writers have never been produced. They have never had a script produced, but they've been signed to take on this multi-million-dollar project. Again, you know, it's a gutsy thing for Paramount to do. Peter and Scott, what are their last names? Oh, I can't remember their last names, but it's two young guys that apparently have impressed the front office people enough for them to commit themselves to that project. And I'm not worried at all, because we also have, you know, Howard Bennett producing, who's also a very fine writer, and we have Leonard Nimoy, who certainly understands scripts and writing as well as acting and directing. So with those two guys in the formative position, and these two young guys with what I'm told is a great idea, I think that Star Trek 4 is going to be able to meet up to the challenge of topping the one that preceded it. You may have heard some rumors about Eddie Murphy perhaps being in Star Trek 4. Well, I'd like to be able to squelch that, but I'm afraid I can't. Initially, it seemed as though Star Trek 4 might be going about the same time that Eddie Murphy's next picture would be starting up. Star Trek, as I said, was initially scheduled for September, and Eddie Murphy has a picture called The Golden Child that's supposed to start in August. So we thought, well, that would eliminate it. Eddie Murphy does owe Paramount another picture. So, you know, the Paramount front office people want to put two big money-making elements together. Not necessarily a wise thing, but, you know, they think that 2 and 2 makes 10 zillion. So we thought, well, that may, you know, deal with it. I have some reservations about Eddie Murphy, although I'm an Eddie Murphy fan, and I think he's a very, very exciting screen presence. I think that very fact might somehow tend to distort what Star Trek is. Star Trek may turn out, because Eddie Murphy is a big, mega box office star, the tendency may be to make Star Trek a frame around, you know, an appearance by Eddie Murphy, which would tend to distort what Star Trek is all about. So I have my reservations about it. However, now that Star Trek's been pushed back to the second week of January, Eddie Murphy may be done with, or will be most definitely done with The Golden Child by that time. And so the rumors are still active and current, and there's been no denial on the part of Paramount. Leonard Nimoy occasionally lifts an enigmatic left eyebrow on that too. So we don't know what's going to be happening with that. But you know, not having seen the script, please don't ask me about any plot points. I can't tell you about that, and you wouldn't want to know anyway. But I can honestly say I can't tell you. So you're asking me something about it would be pointless anyway. So let me thank you all for the support that you've been giving to Star Trek for all these many years. You're the ones that made it happen. And with that, let's open it up for a dialogue. Any thoughts or comments that you may have? Yes, right here.
With your experiences on Star Trek 3, would you say that Star Trek 4 could be a possible pilot for a return to television, say, with new characters?
There's been no talk of making Star Trek 4 a pilot film. The talk is that they want to wind up this continuing, you know, series kind of aspect to Star Trek. Obviously, we will have to begin Star Trek 4 by dealing with the loose ends, but the thought is to make the end of Star Trek 4 a definitive end. end so that it's a completed story, no loose ends left, so that if there should be a Star Trek 5, and I'm fully confident there will be because you're going to support Star Trek 4 enormously at the box office, and the greed and avarice of Paramount will make them want to make that kind of money with Star Trek 5, and I'm sure there is going to be Star Trek 5, but if there should be, then they want to start out with a whole new story. However, on your idea of a television return, I'm glad you brought up that point, because that's something that I've been lobbying Paramount for all these many years. Yes, yes, I'm glad you agree. People with good judgment, good taste. You know, because Star Trek, the concept and the format of Star Trek is much too rich with story potentials, with ideas that can be, visionary and science fiction ideas that can be explored, for us to limit ourselves to one multi-million-dollar picture every 2 years. I think it really should be on television where we can really explore the various facets of Star Trek, of science fiction, of the characters that we have before us. However, both Leonard and Bill have indicated that they don't want to do series television anymore, and it is very strenuous. However, I feel that my metabolism is that of a television actor. I really revel in doing, 7 or 8 scenes per day. Yes, yes. So I've been advocating the return of Star Trek to weekly series television, and the title that I've been recommending to Paramount is, as he well knows, is Captain Sulu. Good title. Has a good ring to it, don't you think? And that could be on, say, Monday night, and on Tuesday night we can have a science fiction medical show titled Dr. McCoy and Dr. Chapel. And Wednesday night we can have another show that explores Vulcan, and In Search of Vulcan. And on Thursday night we can have a show that deals with the drama in engineering, and all the travails and crises that go on there, called Montgomery Scott. And on Friday night we can explore one about communications, in competition with T.J. Hooker, I guess, called Uhura's Crisis, or whatever. And on Saturday we can have a rerun of all 5 shows, so we can have 5 hours of Star Trek on Saturday. Yes. What do you mean, if? That's what I understand, that we're competing against Star Trek right now. Well, that's all right, because you'll watch it next week with even greater and energized fervor. That's right. It's all on tape, and you can watch it at 12 midnight tonight, for that matter. Yes. Friday night. Oh, it's on. Oh, it is. Isn't that incredible? It's still going on that. In Toledo, 11:30. Isn't that fantastic? It's really a phenomenon. I thought, we've been on, as I say, for, 19 years now on television. And why do you folks watch it over and over and over again? Please don't look to me to be able to respond to you on all of the details of Star Trek, not only the trivia, but how the technology of this and that work, because I just worked there. The ones that really know, the answer to those detailed questions are out there. Someone out there knows. I mean, the keeper of the flames is sprinkled throughout this audience. And so if you have that kind of question, I will refer it to our experts out there in the audience. Yes. What do you mean still? I think it's important that we all be always politically active, if anything on the minimal level of voting, and cast an intelligent and informed vote. So you have to, keep getting information. But yes, I'm more active than that. I'm a member of the, should I get partisan and tell you that I'm a member of the Democratic State Central Committee in California? And currently I serve on the, as a chairman of the board of directors of the El Pueblo State Historic Park were built around plazas. And surrounding the plaza, we have our historic buildings. The first luxury hotel that was built in Los Angeles called the Pico House. The oldest structure, Avila Adobe, there. The first bank that was built, the first firehouse, the first church, the first retail square, center was built. And some of those buildings that need a great deal of restoration, so we're in the process of restoring that. We have one retail street called Olvera Street that's a vibrant Mexican marketplace, a mercado. And so when you come to Los Angeles, do visit there. But the project that I'm most excited about right now is I serve on the board of directors of the Los Angeles Theater Center. We're building a 4-theater complex, which is going to be opening in September. September the 20th is our great grand gala opening. But it's not just the building of 4 theaters. I'm a historic preservationist and an architecture buff. And a part of our complex is the restoration of a great classic revival bank building built in 1916, great Corinthian columns, a stained glass skylight over the main marble floored part of the bank. And the 4 theaters are built surrounding the restored bank building, and they all open out into the bank. So the bank building served as a common lobby for the 4 theaters. In the basement of the bank building, we're going to have a haute cuisine French restaurant. Along the sidewalk, we're going to have a Nouvelle California cuisine casual sidewalk cafe. And in the back of the bank building, we're going to have a late after-hours cabaret, where very talented but unknown singers, musicians, stand-up comics will have an opportunity. You know, I'm really proud of this complex because we're doing something that's the total opposite, the polar opposite of what they're doing in New York. In New York, they tear down magnificent theaters and level them to a parking lot. We took a parking lot, tore up a parking lot, and raised 4 grand theaters. So you come visit us in Los Angeles, and when you're in Los Angeles, do take in at least one of the plays at the Los Angeles Theater Center. We're opening in our largest theater with Chekhov's 3 Sisters, Anton Chekhov, not Papa. The 3 Sisters will be played by a powerhouse cast, Elizabeth McGovern, Leslie Ann Warren, and Kim Cattrall. In the next theater, we have an original drama about the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, so it's very politically timely. The Russian captain is going to be played by Ed Harris. You might remember him as John Glenn, or in Places of the Heart, playing the husband. The Afghani rebel leader is going to be played by Stephen Bauer. If you saw Scarface, he's the actor that played Al Pacino's friend who later marries his sister. Or if you saw Thief of Love, he's the one that played the cat burglar. He's a dark, swarthy, smoldering kind of actor, and he's going to play the Afghani rebel leader, and blonde Ed Harris, powerful Ed Harris, is going to play the Russian captain. So, you know, it's the conflict of the 2 opposites, the blonde and the dark. In the third theater, we have Sam Shepard's play, Fool for Love. Sam Shepard, as you know, is a fine actor. You may have seen him in The Right Stuff. But he's also a brilliant American playwright. And we're doing his play, and he's directing this in Los Angeles. That play's been playing for about a year in New York already. And in the third theater, we have, I think, another exciting original drama called It's a Man's World, about the murder of Sal Mineo. And there are a lot of layers and levels to this drama. Obviously, on the surface, it's a good murder mystery. On the next level, there's the examination of what America does to, you know, young teenagers whose values aren't formed yet, and elevating them to stardom, putting them on a pedestal, and, you know, really putting them in an unreal, rarefied world. And then suddenly, when they leave their teenage adolescence and become adults, they pull the support and adulation out from underneath them and leave, you know, that human being bereft. On another level, it's believed that Sal Mineo was homosexual, and so to deal with that question too. So it's going to be a very, very important And so we're thinking in terms of keeping that running, beyond just its scheduled run. So it's going to be an exciting cultural center. So do plan on coming down to Los Angeles and visiting the Los Angeles Theater Center. Yes.
With the time that you're spending doing conventions and Star Trek movies and the thing out in L.A., do you have any time to take any other acting parts yourself? Are you pursuing or anything else?
Oh yes, I'm an actor. I'm a professional actor. I like to be selective, but also some of the parts that I select and that I want, the producer won't cast me in it. I have a Trapper John coming out soon, in which I play a doctor. I did the character before last season, Dr. Chung, a brilliant, as the script says, a brilliant epidemiologist. And so you can see this brilliant man come back and solve another epidemic that strikes the hospital there. There are a couple of irons in the fire that I have that have not warmed up enough for me to be able to talk about.
Any plays at all? Or?
Well, there's a play that I think we'll be doing at the Los Angeles Theater Center. It's not that the policy decision hasn't been definitely made yet, but you may see me on the stage rather than in the boardroom of the LA Theater Center. If this goes, it'll be early next year, about January and February of next year. So yes, do keep your eyes on the ads, the LA Times, and plan your visit to LA then. Okay, I'm told that the time is drawing near, so I have time for one more question, way in the back there.
I was wondering, is there a blooper reel on the Star Trek movies? Or is there anything?
I'm sorry to have to tell you this because I like the blooper reels very much, but the Screen Actors Guild, which for all rights and purposes is a labor union, sued the Paramount for the use of the blooper reels. Their position is that the use of the bloopers is the exploitation of professional actors in an unprofessional life. That it's using the rehearsal period, which the actor should have without fear of having that rehearsal period violated publicly. And so they sued Paramount on that basis, and so that's put a chill on Paramount doing anything like that again, which I think is really unfortunate because I think the blooper reels humanize actors, particularly those of us involved with Star Trek who play rather heroic, bigger-than-life characters. What that does is it shows that we can be human, that we make mistakes, that we can crash into doors, that we can slip on a banana peel. That's right. So, it's highly unlikely that there'll be blooper reels on the motion picture versions. Although, we're so perfect that we don't have any more bloopers, actually. All right, on that note, let me thank you all for the wonderful welcome that you're giving me. And it's a whole weekend yet, so I look forward to visiting with you in the hallways during the course of the next 2 days.
Autographs with George are in the dealer's room at a table that has been set aside.
We're in red. What's your name? Because I kept calling you our leader in red.
Oh, Bill Bryan.
Bill.